Hello everyone, and welcome to today's public TPC training webinar entitled Training Needs Evaluation, or what we call TNE with TPC Training. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm a product manager with TPC Training. I'm going to walk you through really the inner workings of what a training needs evaluation process is all about, what kind of people can get value from a training needs evaluation, and basically what are some of the main results and deliverables organizations and companies can get from a training needs evaluation. So to give you a quick run through of what we're going to go through over the next, I'd say about 30 to 45 minutes, and then we're going to open the floor for discussion. Before we do get started on that, I would like to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded, and this recording will be posted for our public to view on our website within about 2 to 3 business days from this webinar. So you'll be able to watch this back and really maybe share this information with anyone in your organization who you might want to share this with. As well as any of you who are registered for this webinar are also going to get the PDF of the slides of this webinar within about 2 to 3 business days from the ending of this webinar here. One more thing I wanted to let everyone here know is that you can ask questions at any time. So this is a live event right now, and you can go up to your toolbar and type the Q&A. You should see a Q&A button. Click there, type your question to me, and after I'm done chatting about training needs evaluation, I'm going to open the floor for questions and try to answer as many of your questions as I can. So definitely feel free to use that if you have any curiosities about the topic of training needs evaluation. Without further ado, let's talk about a little bit of what we're going to get ourselves into. So I really want to break down, what is a training needs evaluation and maybe what isn't a training needs evaluation. When do organizations gain value from the TNE process? The process of a training needs evaluation. So basically, what is step 1 and step 2 and step 3, and what are some of the ways, what are the best practices we're following to do training needs evaluation? And then some key deliverables of training needs evaluation in general. So this is a highly intensive process, so there's really going to be some good deliverables there too. So let's start with, what is a training needs evaluation, or a TNE? I think my best way of describing this is it really is an intensive, deep dive into an organization's workforce. This isn't kind of a white paper kind of just research project. It really is getting a deep understanding of the company's culture, the way they do business, but also the way they do troubleshooting, the way they operate their machines, the way their shifts run day and night, the overall culture of what people view about safety or efficiency or turnover. Basically, training, when it comes to the need for training, right? Training needs. I'm sure many of us can agree that training touches almost all aspects of an organization, right? People not really having awareness of safety or having concerns about safety, that all ties back to training. People having issues about the troubleshooting process of, let's say, machines or processes in your facility, all ties back to training. So really, a training needs evaluation is all about just assessing where the company's process is along the way of getting education and training in your facility, but also to help identify some of those gaps. And then after one of these is said and done, the goal is to really outline a recommended training program based on the observations that were collected during the training needs evaluation process. The key here about TNE is that it is personal. Again, it is not something that is just through a couple emails back and forth, right? It's really a personal process, a consultative process, where lots of information and insights need to be shared, and really quantitative for sure, numbers about how many people are in the department or accident rates or, that kind of thing, but also lots of qualitative stuff needs to be collected and observed, overall culture, general sentiments toward things, how people are feeling about what would people need from an education standpoint. That's all very qualitative. And then intensive. So it does get very deep and very detailed. And that's really where, it takes a great deal of trust to be able to do a training needs evaluation. So with that, right, when do organizations gain value from a training needs evaluation, right? When do they gain value from TNE? So there's a couple scenarios I'd like to lay out here, and just kind of maybe I want you guys to think whether you've either A, worked for an organization in the past, or the organization you presently work for are struggling with any of these kind of scenarios here that can potentially lead to gaining some value from a TNE. First one being when certain job roles have undefined knowledge requirements. So for this, I really mean about qualification requirements. So what does it take? What kind of skills does it take to be a maintenance tech 1 in your facility? Right? What kind of knowledge and skills do you need to have to be maintenance tech 2? Or senior or junior production technician, or senior or junior, maintenance manager. But I definitely hear a lot about throughout all of our customer base here about the different, senior, junior, level 1, level 2, level 3, or apprentice, journeyman, or master, right, within the facility. What are the requirements for each level, and how do you get there? A lot of people are uncertain about that, and their training needs evaluation can really set up that whole program and that whole job designation and career advancement program. Here's another scenario to consider. When troubleshooting of machines and processes, let's say you're in a manufacturing plant or some sort of production environment, if when those machines go down, that process is messy, chaotic, you're not really sure who's in charge of what or who's going to be able to fix it, it's slow, or it's very costly, right, to troubleshoot machines. I've heard many a time where companies are calling subject matter experts on that machine from across the world, right? Maybe people from entire other countries who are the only ones who know how to fix these machines, and you can imagine how costly that gets very quickly. So troubleshooting, in terms of cost, in terms of payback, right? 1 hour of downtime in these massive production environments. And if any of you listening in are in a production environment, I want you to think, what does 1 hour of downtime cost on my machines that are pumping out goods to others, right? Is it, $100 per hour? Is it thousands of dollars per hour? Or is it, in the case of many I've chatted with, it's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars per hour of downtime in their facilities? So just being able to save 15 minutes of troubleshooting time, especially on the night shift, right, where let's say people are maybe not as clued into the training programs as people on the day shift, can really get the benefit of these training needs really ironed out for them. This kind of gets to that whole night shift versus day shift debate too. When there is a lack of self-sufficiency among members of the workforce, right, where you feel like certain members of the workforce need more constant supervision or guidance than others, where it's really hard to be able to let them just go and take care of, let's say, their machines or their department or their area of the organization without constant supervision or guidance. That's really a telltale sign of maybe needing a clearer, more structured, documented training program. And there are gaps there, right? And this process of TNE can help identify what those gaps are. Maybe there's concerns for safety awareness in the workplace, right? Safety, again, it's one of those, safety is one of those concepts that tie into everything else, right? Whether it's electrical training, there's safety. Whether there's mechanical training, there's safety. Whether there's, HAZWOPers training, there's safety. Even when there's just management training, there's safety. So this kind of plays into a bunch of different topics as well when people are not being safe. And you might be encountering something like this where there's unclear guidelines for the career advancement. So we kind of hinted at that above, but if you are a maintenance tech 1 and you want to know whether your career can grow within your organization, how do you know what it takes to get from maintenance tech 1 to maintenance tech 2, or to junior maintenance tech to senior maintenance tech? People within the organization should be able to have a clearly defined program they can follow, or set of commitments they can follow to get to the next level in their career within their organization. And that kind of stuff, setting that kind of career advancement stuff, is really a cornerstone of many customers for training needs evaluation. They really want to set up an internal apprenticeship program or internal training program. And then kind of wrapping all these up into the idea of morale and culture. So if people in the facility or the organization are really just struggling, finding purpose in their jobs, or feeling like, that they don't have a way to advance or, um, grow within their organization, that can uh, really be a telltale sign of needing a kind of stronger education and training and workforce development program in your facility. So I just want you to kind of think about these different scenarios and whether maybe certain departments, right? This can be on a department by department basis. This can be on a shift by shift basis, or this can be an organization wide effort. Different scales here of training needs evaluation. So now you kind of know, what can be some of the motivations for wanting to get a training needs evaluation done. Now let's talk about the process, right? What's the process of training needs evaluation? Well, like we talked about earlier, this is a highly personal, highly intensive, and highly qualitative process, right? So there's a lot of talking and a lot of interviewing that needs to happen of all sorts of different people. So because interviewing with people and talking with people is a cornerstone of any training needs assessment or evaluation process, uh, what's going to really be required is either a site visit, right, for on-site, or in our today's day and age here in 2020, getting that in-person approach to be done through a series of in-person video meetings as well. Definitely doable. I mean, you can almost do more through in-person video meetings, being able to meet with anyone from anywhere to chat through some of these finer points about the culture of training and the effectiveness of the training and how people are learning and how people are absorbing information in your facility. It really is about these interviews. I would say, you can't do any good training needs evaluation without talking to the people who need the training. Yes, the interviews involve the management, right? Let's say the training managers, the HR department, like way up there at the training level, but also the interviews must always include the people who are on the floor getting the training. So the production technicians, the operators, the maintenance staff, who are really either getting value from the training, learning something from the training or not, right? That they're already getting, or what kind of training they want to get, what kind of training they feel would help make their job successful. So really all this kind of stuff can be uncovered like layers of an onion, so to speak, during the TNE process. And the job of the person conducting the TNE is to really synthesize this massive fire hose of different people's opinions, mindsets, backgrounds, observations, and really get them into a cohesive, synthesized idea of what that organization needs to move forward with training and with education in their facility. Once interviews are done, what else needs to be done? That kind of that filing cabinet is showing that concept here is really the TNE needs to assess the existing training documentation and programming within the facility. I kind of harp on this in a lot of our webinars because it's such an important concept. Is if the training wasn't written down, it never happened. I'll say that again. If the training wasn't written down, it never happened. And by that I mean, if you do what a lot of people do in facilities, job shadowing, right? Where people are going out on the floor, kind of looking over the shoulder of the more experienced person, right? And saying, all right, watch me as I do this. You understand? Okay, good. Now you do it, kind of thing. That's all well and good. And that person is definitely learning on the job, but that is not considered proper on the job training from a programming and documentation, and particularly from an OSHA, right, or governmental perspective. Uh, if training was never documented, it really never happened according to any of our regulation or safety agencies like OSHA are concerned. So to what degree, right, is training documented in your facility? I want you to think about that now, and whether it might be worth doing an assessment or evaluation of that documentation. Sign-in sheets, right? Sign-in sheets for training. attendance logs for training, training documentation that's actually used in the training, like presentations or workbooks and PowerPoints. Is there a clear, let's say, curriculum guide that you've set up for how to get Maintenance Tech 1 to Maintenance Tech 2? And then another very key thing that ends up always being discussed is, are there clear qualification requirements? Minimum qualification requirements for certain jobs. So basically, here's what you need to be able to do in terms of, let's say, training or skills or knowledge to be able to do, let's say, this electrician job in my facility, or to be a maintenance manager in my facility. Are there certain very specific requirements for that? That's a big part of this as well. Once all that's put together, right, we got the qualitative assessments from the interviews, and we have the more quantitative, stuff that's written down on paper from the documentation. Now it's time to really observe and document the TNE findings, right? The overall kind of key pain points that the organization is experiencing. Get a synopsis of the culture within the organization when it comes to training about the topic at hand. Perception of knowledgeability. So are people feeling that they have the knowledge they need, or do they not? Or maybe people feel like they have the knowledge they need, but the people who are managing them do not. There's always different ways to look at that as well. And then what's the troubleshooting process look like within the organization? Right? Kind of keeping that and observing that and documenting that. And of course, no TNE is complete without synthesizing those observations and turning them into something that can be made into an action item, right? So really those action items are delivered as a proposal for a proposed complete training program that will meet the organization's needs. So this is really one of the main deliverables here at the end of the process of a training needs evaluation, is to really deliver on providing a training program that will meet the needs of all the job types being considered in the department or the organization. So will they need to start with, let's say, basics of electricity training, right? And move on to, let's say, electrical panels and troubleshooting? Or maybe based on our interviews, they're not going to get into any electrical work in this facility. We're going to rely on contractors for that. And instead, what we want them to focus on how to talk to people, right? And how to properly resolve conflicts and do more welding and mechanical work. Or maybe we want just to focus on safety, right? So to focus on fire extinguishers and ladder safety and all that kind of stuff. We can really lay out the safety, the recurring, and the ongoing career advancement based in skills and knowledge based training for every job or individual in that facility. Really is quite a detailed work, and as you can imagine, this touches on basically every aspect of an organization. So this TNE process is quite intensive. Once that proposal is delivered, it really is something we always strive to do here, and that is provide ongoing guidance. Even after that proposal was delivered to them, provide guidance on how to get there, right? There's a lot that is delivered in terms of how you can go about moving forward in the future. Now it's time to really provide ongoing guidance on the implementation of that training program, how you can get it done, what are some ways you can move toward that in a not necessarily easy per se, but definitely the most straightforward and the most painless way possible. Because trust me, good training will really solve so many issues that you can see above. So let's really break into that proposal a little bit and break into those deliverables of a training needs evaluation. So in that proposal, right, the key deliverables that we really tend to give on the TPC training side are three things. The first thing is curriculum paths, right? So really creating a highly tailored learning journey for each job role within that organization or that department. So let's say, kind of the example I was using before, maintenance technician 1, maintenance technician 2, and then senior maintenance technician. What does it take to be the maintenance tech 1 right out of the gate, right, to get hired in there? What kind of skills and knowledge is it going to take to get to maintenance tech 2? And then what are you going to really have to do to prove that you're that master maintenance technician or that senior maintenance technician? We can provide that curriculum path to get you from point A to point B to point C to point D, and maybe help also design career advancement incentives like pay raises or increases in rank within the facility, for instance. So curriculum paths, and I'm going to show you an example of one of those deliverables after this. Second big deliverable of a TNE proposal and process would be competency mapping, right? Some organizations want competency mapping, some don't, but competency mapping is really all about matching the skills, let's say, that the employer wants that person to have to the class that can offer that skill. And I'm going to show you an example of a competency map as well. So let's say, okay, I want people to learn how to use a multimeter to test resistance on a fuse. Okay, here's the bit of training we can offer that will give people the skills to use a multimeter to test ohms on a fuse. Okay, I want people to be able to understand how high a ladder should be before it needs the bars around it. Okay, here's the training we need to understand ladder safety, yada, yada, yada. And it just goes on and on. And these competency maps, as you can imagine, will be very intensive, very long, detailed documents in and of themselves, where you map, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds of different competencies you think these people need to have. And then we can match training. And at that point, when you start mapping out from a competency perspective or skills-based perspective, you really get to see where the gaps are and where you're like, wow, I was actually not providing that person this training. I just assumed they knew it already. And that's where you can really start stepping up where you're offering that training and how you're documenting that training in your facility. And then finally, along with the tailored curriculum paths in the training program, with the competency maps that can lead to that training program, it's going to be a set of just a comprehensive training program recommendations. A breakdown of the gaps, first of all, that were identified during the observations, and then how to overcome them. So there's recommendations that we can provide on the culture and perception of training, right? And some best practices for how to overcome that. This is a big one here, how to blend different training formats. So when are you going to want to pursue classroom or instructor-led training, right? In a classroom environment, or virtually through video chat software, which is what we're doing now, right? Classroom versus self-guided online modules, where you click in and you watch a narrated text document that you can stop and start anytime you want based on your schedule. For more intensive hands-on learning, you can imagine classroom is a little bit better. Whereas self-guided online learning would be better where you have a limited time after a shift, where you can just take small chunks of training without having to take, let's say, 2 days out of your way to take a classroom training. So really, it depends on lots of different factors. Training documentation, again, we can help draft and even develop training documentation based on what we found. You don't have clearly documented qualification requirements like you see at the bottom of this list. Let's work together to develop that documentation, right? You need career advancement program within your organization. Let's draft that up. Let's write that out. And basically, here's exactly what you need to kind of fill in the gaps of your training program. So I'm just going to show you all a little example of what I'm talking about here. And then that's pretty much it. I think that's all I wanted to show you. And I really wanted to, focus the rest of the session on Q&A. So again, this is a reminder before I wrap up, is if you have any detailed questions, I see one has come through, feel free to type anything you wish into the Q&A box, and I'll make sure to get to them at the end of the session. So here's an example of that curriculum path, right? So this is, again, on a job-by-job basis or a role-by-role basis. So here's an example of a qualified electrical worker's curriculum path within your facility. So let's say you want to get someone to be considered qualified from the aspect of qualified electrical worker. So you can say they reach level 1 by taking these 2 classroom courses right here, fundamentals of general maintenance and troubleshooting essentials. And then, so they're getting the basics of what it takes to be a maintenance technician. And then they can take these self-guided online modules to reinforce that. And then once they're there, they get past level 1 and they move on to level 2, for instance, where they're getting basics of electricity and they're doing electrical troubleshooting with meters and advanced electrical troubleshooting, right? And that gets them to this level, and so on and so forth. You can see that they can trace, and then at the end of their journey, they can either specialize in different areas, or they can just be all done and they've reached the key point. It really is up to the facilities doing this kind of work, which is really exciting and really highly tailorable based on the amount of ways you can go. Are you going to get are you going to get that training from TPC training? Could be, or maybe we don't offer that training, and we're going to show you where you can get that training. Let's say in management skills or whatever it might be. We can, if that's what you guys need for training, we're going to show you on how to get there. A lot of times we're working with companies work with local community colleges, and we can help identify which programs there that can help their people in conjunction with any other training we might offer. Different formats here, right? You can see live instructor-led training, online self-guided courses mixed all together here. And then here's just another type of job title, for instance, with whole different types of classes, right? So maintenance fundamentals always starts it off, but now let's say if you're an HVAC technician in let's say for a school or for a college, now you're going to start getting into air conditioning and refrigeration and hands-on air conditioning maintenance troubleshooting courses, and chilled water and HVAC controls and distribution, and coupling those with very specific online classes as well. So really there's all sorts of ways to blend together different learning styles for those who learn hands-on to mix with those who learn by hearing and just reading and understanding, and those who learn by interaction. And then remember we talked about the competency maps. Let's chat about those for a moment. Here's kind of just a quick snippet of a competency map where you list out all the different skills required for a job, and you kind of list them out on what you say it should take to be a maintenance technician 1. And then we can match the training course or the training module name to that skill that's provided, right? So what skills are required for the job? That's the first question, and that's a hard question to ask, right? A hard question to answer as well. It's really up to the employer, right? Do you require that checking and replacing fuses, for instance, should be a skill that this person has if they're going to be a maintenance tech 1? Maybe you do. Maybe you say, nope, we're not going to do checking and replacing fuses. That's electrical work we want our contractors to do. It's really up to you where you delineate the skills. But when you do identify something that it is a skill that someone needs, it's really up to the employer to provide training that matches to that skill. So in this case, checking and replacing fuses can be taught through the basics of electricity course, for instance. Operation of GFCIs and knowing how they work, that's a basics of electricity course. And knowing how to do safe electrical troubleshooting, that's going to be in the electrical troubleshooting course, and so on and so forth. And if you ever see anything here that's blank, right? So let's say you said, all right, I want them to know how to perform checks of grounding, and then that was left blank because you don't really have one, a training that covers that. Then you're like, okay, now how can I provide a training that covers all the bases of the skills I believe my people need? And you can go from there. So really providing this detailed competency map to offered types of training is something offered for our TNE, a training needs evaluation process. So basically that is the entire meat and potatoes of what I wanted to share with you all today about the process of going from point A to point B, of having kind of a maybe undocumented, maybe less structured or less standardized training programs, to really seeing where the gaps are and getting the highest quality education, highest quality learning, highest quality skills development and career advancement within your facility. So it's time to open it up for questions. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the questions being posed right now. And if anyone has any additional questions after this webinar, always feel free to contact us at sales@tpctraining.com, and our phone number at 847-808-4000. So basically the sales@tpctraining.com email gets in touch with our executive team, our sales VP and our directors of our company, and they're going to get the information out to everyone that needs it about training needs evaluation and your needs, and we're going to be able to help you through that. So, this is a highly consultative process. So usually you're called back by one of our consultants who are going to be able to talk to you in more detail about, what your company needs. You can imagine those discussions can get long and detailed after a certain while, which is always fun for us to get into the weeds with you. Let's see. Good questions here. So let's go with this anonymous attendee here who said, when there is a situation when a staff needs to be redeployed in an emergency situation. So, in today's world, there's a lot of emergency situations out there. Is there a quick and easy way to identify training needs for the roles? And are there pointed and uncomplicated questions or processes to follow? And I wish I could just say, a absolute yes or no to that question, but unfortunately, I have to give you my least favorite answer I have to give, but it is true, and that is, it depends, right? Um, it really depends on what your organization, or what I like to call the employer. So what that organization who you're working with and being redeployed with um, requires for their roles. So do you one employer might require, let's say, 5 years of experience in the facility before they're going to be able to be considered qualified for that job, even after an emergency. Maybe another employer is going to say, you know what, all I want you to do is to take this really quick written mechanical aptitude test, and then you're back on the floor. Or maybe the other one will say, you know what, you have an apprenticeship from the state of Massachusetts. That to me is meaningful. I trust that whole program, the apprenticeship program. You get back to work. I trust that. Where others will be like, no, I don't really trust that if they have an apprenticeship, they're going to succeed in my facility. I want you to have an apprenticeship, and I want to give you X amount of classroom training before you can be considered qualified. So really, I think for you, you're going to want to see what the questions are and what the process is to follow for that employer. And if they're not sure what that process is, I think it might be time to define that process on what it is. What are the skills you need those people to have to be redeployed? What are the bits of knowledge that they need to have to be successful and not get themselves hurt, right? And make sure they're safe. Let's see, what's another good question? How about that's a great question, by the way. Very, very well thought out. Have we done works in smelters, especially in the operations plant, for operations and plant operators? Yes, absolutely. Our consulting services have a lot of steel work in our portfolio. So a lot of steel manufacturing, high temperature furnaces. I'm actually doing a consultative project right now for a steel making facility who's working with these high temperature smelting and steel melting facilities. So yeah, there's lots to do there. In this instance, we're mapping their processes. So a lot of consulting work involves highly technical kind of mapping of the processes, where you got to get the schematics out of being on paper and getting them into an electronic format, and maybe even an interactive, usable on-the-job training format that can be loaded, let's say, onto a tablet or a laptop. That's really a training improvement for on-the-job training that can be offered after a training needs evaluation is done as well. And so, yeah, we're doing a lot of that kind of work. What we call our TPC Operate platform is being done a lot in this kind of smelter steel industry. Once I have a training needs assessment done, what are the next steps, right? Is this program scalable? That's a great question. And can I start small? Do you think it's okay if I start small and then build from there? That's a great question. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. So basically, starting small is probably the best way to start, right? Let's say you're finding that the biggest pain points for you is in your operations department, right? So you come in and have the training needs assessment done for your machine operators. Let's say you find that they're just not knowledgeable as you expected them to be when you hired them, or they're just not able to do the jobs you need them to do. Let's see what kind of training we can do to get them to be where you need them. And then if that succeeds for you, right, and you can kind of see the benefits of that over time, now you can start extending those training needs to, let's say, the maintenance team or the shipping team or the management team, quite frankly, can use training needs assessment too. So really it does scale from small to large. It will be remarkably easy once kind of the training needs assessment process is kicked off in one department. It'll be very, very straightforward and streamlined to get it kicked off for the next department, because really getting that baseline documentation about how the facility, how the organization runs, what's the culture like, with all that already under the bridge, you can really just get into the finer points of the other departments. So yeah, that's a great question. Can you share any tools and resources with us so that we can begin both the process and the deliverables section of the presentation, i.e. templates, etc.? That's a great question. So I know our marketing team has at the ready and our sales team has at the ready some of these curriculum paths, some of these example curriculum paths you can use and print off. So obviously you're going to see a copy of the two that I shared with you, and there's definitely a few others that you can gain access to. Yeah, send us an email at that email you see here, and you should be able to get more templates of that. So absolutely, we want to be able to give you tools to get you started, and I hope this webinar at least is giving you the right questions to get you started on how you can really find yourself successful in the training needs department. So very good question there. Here's one that came in. What are some examples of ways to reward your employees for completing training programs? Great question. You know, there's a bunch of ways to incentivize people in your facility, but I would say, I'm sure you see this coming, but the best carrot you can offer is pay raises, right? So, you know, hey, you complete this training program and you're going to go from maintenance tech 1 to maintenance tech 2, and that's going to give you a $3 per hour raise, or let's say a $5,000 or $2,000 per year raise in your salary, for instance. Having just something that they can look forward to at the end of the program is going to be very beneficial to them. Maybe, you know, there's all sorts of different incentives you can use, whether, let's say, okay, you'll be selected for, you know, these different perks. Let's say, you know, extra PTO, or what are some other good examples of what people have done? But being able to be picked out for special projects, right, where you're getting more recognition and more opportunities to grow within the organization. Being able to be on the committee, but being able to be selected for, let's say, this job role that might be opening up in the future. Just giving people the best reward you can give people is a sense that they have a place to go and a place to grow within their organization. And that's really what we try to set up for these companies who are working on TNEs with us, is to set up a path for career advancement, whether it be for pay raises or at least for just growth of your own knowledge and skills within the organization. That's really what this is all about, is to help companies instill that culture of education, of growth, and of advancement through a nice, high quality training program. So with that, I think we're all set. I think I've answered most of the questions I see here, kind of synthesized them into these questions. So, you know, I really appreciate you all being here. It's been a pleasure chatting with you today. And again, look out for the recording of this session on our website. I will send you a link to that to everyone here on this call within the next 2 business days. And along with that email, you will see a PDF copy of these slides that I just presented to you today. So thank you very much for being here, and have a wonderful day.